everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our session. My name is Christina Graisman, and on behalf of Rosal Singh and I, we are so happy to be presenting to you live and in person at Summit. So today we're going to be talking about how to accelerate your SAP S/4HANA transformation on AWS. And in order to make our presentation as impactful as possible, I'm just curious, for those of you sitting in the audience, how many of you are currently running SAP on AWS? Are any of you currently doing that? Or no? Okay, so are you thinking about it? So you're still running on-prem and you're thinking about running SAP in the cloud. Okay, so maybe we don't have either of those, but it's all good. Thanks so much. So why are we even talking about ERP in the cloud anyway? Well, it's because ERP modernization is a key pillar of enterprise modernization. So the cloud has really changed our expectations for how software functionality works and the speed and the agility at which we expect to be able to get things done. And your ERP system is really the lifeblood of your organization. And we find that legacy ERP systems really can't meet the expectations of our customers, our employees, and our other stakeholders. And so that's why AWS and SAP are partnering to help customers modernize your ERP and help you along that journey. So according to two recent surveys by the SAP user group ASUG, 79% of SAP customers either plan to migrate to S/4HANA, have already started to move, or are already live. And so why are customers moving? What are some of the benefits that they're seeing? Well, according to the survey, they're looking to realize digital transformation benefits, process improvement and standardization benefits, retire legacy ERP or consolidate, and of course, improve overall functionality and performance. And we're going to talk about in this presentation how AWS can help achieve each of those things and more. So I've told you a little bit about why customers are choosing S/4HANA, but why are customers choosing to do it on AWS? Well, it's due in large part to the 13 years of customer-obsessed innovation that we've had around SAP. So we've been running SAP in the cloud since 2008, and we've been running SAP customer workloads in the cloud since 2011. And we've had a number of industry firsts along the way. So, for example, we were the first cloud provider to support SAP as a customer. Back in 2007, SAP was looking for a better way to provision infrastructure for the next version of NetWeaver. And they were at a startup conference and they heard our CTO, Werner Vogel, speak about the Amazon cloud and provisioning servers on demand. And so an innovation team created a self-service model where their developers could start provisioning servers for AWS. And that's how SAP workloads first ended up on the AWS cloud. So we then became the first cloud provider to host not only an SAP workload for SAP, but also for SAP customers shortly thereafter. We were the first to certify infrastructure for SAP production workloads. So AWS customers were asking us, how do I run SAP in the cloud? And we first certified SAP for SAP Business Suite, and then by early 2012, customers were running deployments in production, and then later that year, we certified the infrastructure for SAP HANA. We were the first to release SAP Cloud Deployment Automation. So later in this presentation, Rosal's going to talk about AWS Launch Wizard. And what we found is that customers, as they were starting to adopt SAP in the cloud, they wanted a better UX experience in the console. And so we created Launch Wizard, which can take deploying a SAP environment on AWS, what used to take weeks or even months can now be done in hours. And you'll see a preview of that a little bit later in this presentation. A couple of other points I just want to cover on this slide. I know there's a lot of it here, but there's some really good points in here. I think the other thing that I want to talk about is that we were the first to build a purpose-built infrastructure for HANA. We released in 2016 our X1 instances, and this is the world's first cloud instance purpose-built for large in-memory databases like SAP HANA, with up to 2 terabytes of memory per instance. And then in 2019, we expanded that to support customers with some of the biggest HANA databases anywhere, with up to 24 terabytes of memory in just a single instance. We were also the first cloud provider to build a dedicated partner network to help customers move their SAP real estate to the cloud. And then just a couple years after that, we were also the first to build the first SAP dedicated professional services organization. And then we've also done a few other industry firsts, one of which was industry-leading cloud storage throughput. So in 2020, we released and certified our R5B instances, and they offer up to 260,000 IOPS per instance for storage-intensive SAP workloads, something that no other cloud provider can offer. And we have launched just recently the SAP Lens for the well-architected review. And basically, this takes the 13 years of experience that we've had working with SAP in the cloud, and we've put that into a series of best practices that customers can take advantage of. And so this SAP Lens for the well-architected review provides guidance across 5 pillars, and they are operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. So as much as I would like to talk to you about, running SAP on AWS, it's much more impactful for you to hear from some of our customers. So here's just a couple of examples of customers that have made the move. So at Origin, they really appreciated not only our cloud expertise, but also our SAP expertise. And they also appreciated the pace of innovation around our offerings. At Kellogg's, they were able to realize significant benefits in how fast they were able to generate reports, which led to increased productivity. Revlon is one of our Rise with SAP on AWS customers, and they chose this route because they're looking to reduce their total cost of ownership, as well as see increased flexibility and agility. So Revlon's actually going to be telling their story at Sapphire in May in Orlando. So if you're attending Sapphire, I highly encourage you to attend their presentation and learn more about their Rise journey. And then finally, Lockheed Martin chose AWS because of our maturity in the market, the breadth of our services, our commitment to cybersecurity, as well as our experience with SAP HANA platforms. Analysts also recognize the value that we're giving to customers. So this is ISG, and they have there, and I want to get the name of the report right, the Provider Lens Quadrant Report for SAP HANA Infrastructure Services. And they've ranked AWS as the leader in every country for every year that they have issued this report. And in just this last report, they called out our leadership in a number of areas, specifically infrastructure security and performance, automation through tools like Launch Wizard, and customer choice. So now I'm going to turn things over to Rosal, and he's going to go into more depth on some of the topics that I introduced.
Thanks, Christina. So I'm Rosal Singh. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect for SAP on AWS. In my current role, I help my customers architect their SAP solutions, leveraging both SAP as well as AWS's best practices. Show of hands of people who've heard about Rise with SAP. All right, awesome. So Rise with SAP, it is very important to understand that it is yet another choice for our customers if they're planning to move to SAP S4HANA in the near future. So with Rise with SAP on AWS, it offers a fully managed path to SAP S/4HANA system based on SAP's business processes as well as AWS's cloud leadership. You get to extend your SAP system by leveraging SAP's business technology platform as well as SAP Signavio, which is SAP's business process intelligence software, which SAP recently acquired, into one single subscription. So it's basically SAP's foray into subscription-based licensing model. And you have the option to convert your existing ECC system into an SAP S/4HANA system, or it could be a new SAP S/4HANA implementation as well. Now with SAP on AWS natively, you still have the option to bring in your traditional licenses, your perpetual licenses for your SAP systems onto AWS. You get maximum control and ownership of your SAP landscape, your SAP environment, and costs as well. So you have the option to bring your SAP systems as it is, basically rehosting your SAP systems from on-premises onto AWS. You can migrate to a suite on HANA or go for a greenfield, bluefield, or a brownfield S/4HANA implementation. And you can tailor your system according to your specific needs or requirements. And it could be your security or industry-specific compliance requirements as well. Now, various customers have taken multiple paths and different approaches to get to AWS. RBI, Restaurants Brands International, they moved their ECC on Oracle to AWS, and they saw 83 CapEx reduction, 18% OpEx reduction, and 28% performance improvement. Newmont, they acquired Goldcorp, which was the largest acquisition in the gold industry. So they ended up with two disparate ECC systems, which they consolidated into a suite on HANA on AWS. And they were able to save $500,000 annually as far as the infrastructure costs are concerned. Bristol Myers Squibb, they chose the path of selective data transitioning for their SAP S/4HANA implementation. So they were able to reduce the cost by 20%. They automated their GxP compliance requirement with the greenfield S/4HANA deployment. And then we have customers like Invista and Volkswagen who are innovating by leveraging all the AWS native services by integrating SAP data and the IoT data, or it could be leveraging the AI ML services with that SAP data. So what Volkswagen is expected to achieve by 2025 is 25% improvement in manufacturing productivity by integrating SAP data and that IoT data. Now, before I dive deep into all the services and the tools that are available to you, let's look at some of the top challenges IT teams face with SAP projects. So the first one is lack of resources with the necessary skills to implement that SAP project. And this particular study, when I'm talking about these challenges, this was done by ASUG in collaboration with Avanta. So these were the challenges that surfaced up, that bubbled up. And the first one, as I mentioned, lack of resources with the necessary skills. High costs related to infrastructure, software, and then consulting. Lack of consistency in configuring, onboarding, and management. And then human error. So as you might have heard, in AWS, we always try to work backwards based on our customers' feedback. So how do we address these? So when it comes to lack of resources, by introducing automation in your deployment processes, we can eliminate cross-team dependencies. You can get more productivity out of your valuable resources so that they can focus on innovation. And then because you end up using these cutting-edge tools and cloud-based architectures, you're able to attract top IT talent to your organization. And when we talk about high costs, usually on-premises, you end up over-provisioning based on some peak assumptions or your peak usage assumptions. So on AWS, we always try to avoid that by right-sizing your infrastructure so that you're able to save on costs. And you're able to follow that grow as you know approach. So if the demand increases, if you need more horsepower when it comes to your EC2 or your storage requirements, or your compute or your storage requirements, you're able to scale up. And by introducing automation again, I can reduce labor costs as well, because what used to take me months or even weeks, now it only takes me hours by using AWS native services or native tools like AWS Launch Wizard for SAP. And by lowering the compute and the storage costs, you get more SAPs or storage per dollar spent on AWS. Now, when we talk about inconsistent configurations and onboarding and management, this is where our AWS services like Systems Manager come in, where you can manage fleet of compute instances on top of which your SAP workloads are running seamlessly, right? And then you can reuse the SAP patterns for infrastructure as a code. So you're basically moving towards that infrastructure as a code model, and you're reusing the templates, reusing your templates that you've built during your deployments for further deployments, for future deployments as well. So it could be that N+ environment that you have to create. So reusing those deployment templates, your system is up and running within few hours. Now, when it comes to human errors, these SAP tools are aligned with SAP's and AWS's best practices so that you spend far less time reading documentation. If I'm creating an SAP system, I need to go through the SAP's documentation, the operating system documentation, and then if I'm setting up high availability, then I'm further reading up documentation as to how to set up that pacemaker solution for that particular operating system, right? So if I give you a tool, you have to go through one single document, and you can set up your system within hours. That will avoid human error because now my code is doing all my work for me, so there's less human intervention, eventually leading to less human errors and reducing risks during your migrations or your deployments. Storengy is a great example. Storengy is a subsidiary of a French multinational company, which is NG. And what they did, they leveraged all the AWS native tools and services and the programs that were available to them. They were able to reduce their SAP S4HANA deployment from months to hours with AWS Launch Wizard for SAP. Reduce HANA backup times from 1 hour to 5 minutes, leveraging AWS's Backint Agent, which is a free of cost SAP certified solution that we've built for your HANA databases. And they're expected to reduce their operating costs by 40%. Now, in the subsequent slides, what I'll focus on is all the tools and the services that are available to you should you decide to go natively with AWS. So first, let's focus on migration. So we received constant feedback from our customers and our partners to package our learning from the past 13 years of running and operating and migrating SAP systems onto AWS. So what we have done is we've built a comprehensive guide focusing on, right now, it's focusing on 5 pillars, but eventually it'll focus on the 6th one as well. And these pillars are operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization, so that you can run your SAP workloads the cloud native way. Now, in the current release, as I mentioned, it supports 5 pillars, and eventually we plan to release the next version with sustainability included as well. So you can conduct a well-architected framework review focusing on the SAP lens during the migration, or it could be before the migration as well, or after the migration when you reach that stabilized stage or stabilized phase where you want to focus on a particular pillar of your interest. So it could be cost optimization, where you want to see how you can further reduce costs. So this is where you can have these sessions or the well-architected review focusing on the SAP lens conducted with your SAP solution architects like me. So reach out to your local AWS representative or your account manager, and then we can conduct this free of cost for you. And this is important because now you're reducing risks, you're ensuring that you're meeting your business requirements, your security and your compliance requirements, and your systems are designed with high availability or disaster recovery based on your RPO and your RTO requirements. All right. With any SAP migration, and specifically large migration, you end up with multiple tools, multiple teams, and then there are a lot of manual tasks as well, which could be related to installation of agents, getting those offline approvals from all the stakeholders. And then also you want to check the network dependencies between your SAP systems. So whether my SAP S4HANA system is talking to another system a lot, right? It could be a Vertex system. So should I move these two systems together in that wave of migration, right? So you need to gather all these insights. And because there is no unified reporting, no unified tool which can do this for you, so what we've introduced is AWS Migration Hub. It's an existing service. It's been there for a couple of years or a year now. And what it can do for you, it can import the existing system inventory for you by using multiple tools of your choice in one single place. And it could be a tool like Application Discovery Collector, which is an AWS native tool. Or it could be a third-party tool as well. However, you're consolidating that data into Migration Hub. Then you're doing right sizing of all the applications that are being migrated based on the recommendation that AWS Migration Hub provides. And then you're capturing and visualizing all the network dependencies and the performance requirements that you have. And this all happens in the assess phase. Now, eventually, in the mobilize phase, after you've analyzed the server performance and identified all the server dependencies, you group these applications and build a migration plan. And in the migrate and modernize phase, you track application migrations from multiple tools. So yesterday, and this is as new as it gets, we launched AWS Migration Hub Orchestrator for SAP. So at this launch, what we have done, we have included AWS provided standard workflow templates for your SAP NetWeaver systems running on HANA databases using multiple tools such as HANA System Replication, Application Migration Service, or it could be any other tool of your choice. And all these tasks, the migration-related tasks, are automated. And even the post-migration tasks can be automated as well. So now, these are standard templates. If you want to further customize it, you have that option as well. You can add a step in that template where you can provision a script which basically does your automation for you during that migration of that particular application, of that particular SAP application that you're trying to migrate. So it gives me that one-stop shop, a single place where I can migrate my systems automatically onto AWS. So right now, AWS Migration Hub Orchestrator is available in all the regions where AWS Migration Hub is available. It's free of cost. There is no additional costs for our customers or our partners. So highly recommend using that tool if you're considering a migration of your SAP NetWeaver system, which is running on HANA database. And as always, we love to hear feedback from you so that we can further improve that orchestrator tool for you. Now, this was about migration. Let's look at deployment and configuration. So I've talked about AWS Launch Wizard for SAP a lot, right? So what it is. And let me give you a brief history about automation on AWS for SAP workloads. So in 2014, we introduced AWS Quick Starts for SAP HANA, and then we rolled out for SAP NetWeaver and SAP S4HANA as well. So Quick Starts were basically CloudFormation scripts that you could run, and you can deploy your SAP systems within a few hours. These were great. But however, we got constant feedback again from our customers that they were looking for a better UI experience, something which is embedded in the AWS console, which can give them recommendations on the supported and the certified EC2 systems that have to be configured for their SAP deployments. Also, costs associated with it as well. So that is where we introduced, and that is when we introduced in 2020, AWS Launch Wizard for SAP. It's a free service that provides a wizard-based, a guided experience for configuring and deploying SAP on AWS. So you get the recommendations based on your CPU and the memory requirements for your compute instances, for your EC2 instances. It configures the storage for you, and it can do high availability setup for you as well, if you ask it to. So let's start from the bottom here. So as I was mentioning, it configures those AWS resources, compute, and storage for you, leveraging all the AWS native services, such as EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud, EBS, Elastic Block Storage, leveraging all the certified volumes that we have for the HANA databases. And then it does the operating system deployment and storage allocation. So right now it supports Red Hat and SUSE. And then if you want to configure high availability on top of it using Red Hat's or SUSE's pacemaker solution, Launch Wizard can do that for you as well. And as a last step, it installs the SAP S/4HANA system, or it could be a BW for HANA system, SAP NetWeaver system, or HANA database, which you could be using in a sidecar scenario as well. So you can do that as well. And right now, it supports various deployment patterns, such as single instance deployment. So all your SAP components, such as ACS, primary application server, the database goes onto one single compute instance, one single EC2 instance. And then it supports distributed installation as well. So all your SAP components go across multiple EC2 instances. It supports HANA scale-out scenario as well for your BW for HANA systems. And then the game changer for me is the scale-up scenario where it supports high availability as well. So it does the installation of that SAP HANA system, and after that, it configures all the pacemaker cluster resource agents for me as well. So that, and everything is based on AWS's and SAP's best practices. So all the configurations that it's doing behind the scenes, it's all based on our recommendations. Let's see Launch Wizard in action, right? So I've talked a lot about Launch Wizard for SAP, so let's see it in action. All right, so here I'm in my AWS console. Let's search for Launch Wizard. And we'll select Choose Application, and we'll select SAP. And I click on Create Deployment. So as a first step, it'll ask you to review permissions because it has to create that role which deploys the services on your behalf. So everything on AWS starts with authorizations. So that's where it creates that role for you. Click on Next, and now it's time to define my infrastructure. So I give my deployment name. And you can reuse this particular deployment configuration for future deployments. So provide the description here. We'll keep it blank for now, and then enable rollback on failed deployments. This is very important because if it fails, you want to investigate, you want to troubleshoot as to why it failed, right? So I'll leave it at default. I won't check it because I don't want it to delete the deployed resources, so that if there are any issues, I can go into that particular EC2 instance and troubleshoot what was the root cause. And then it also creates a service catalog product for me. So you can create that product in the service catalog service and release it to your SAP basis folks. So it gives you that option as well. In fact, what you can also do is create a Terraform wrapper around it, if Terraform is your preferred infrastructure as a code choice when it comes to automated deployments. Now here, we'll skip that service catalog product option. And as always in AWS, best practice is to tag your resources. So let's give it a name, and we'll give it AWS Summit Demo. And we'll create a new configuration. So here, let's select S4 prod, and this is my production deployment. And I'll select the key pair for it. So let's do that. And I'll select my VPC and the availability zone. And in those availability zones, I have my subnets. So let's select that. And I'll select my second availability zone as well, because I'm deploying my systems in high availability. So they will be deployed across the availability zones as a best practice. And then I select my second subnet, and then I'll verify the connectivity so that it can download the patches from the internet. So it does need that outbound connectivity. And then I'll let it create the security groups for me. So here, I'll allow connections from my VPC CIDR. And if you have a proxy, you can configure that. And time zone, so let's give PDT here. And then always a best practice, enable encryption. Right, so we are going for EBS encryption, our volume encryption. We are using KMS for encrypting my EBS volumes. And then define the SAP Sys group ID. And then you define the notification. So if the deployment failed or the deployment was successful, you can get a notification via a text message or an email. So I've created a simple notification for me, which I'll get in an email if my deployment failed or was successful. Click on Next. And here you get an option to deploy that NetWeaver stack on HANA, or it could be a standalone or a sidecar HANA database as well. So let's change my system ID. Let's call it ECP. And this is where I define my system admin user ID. So we'll stick with the default values here. And then it also gives you the option to configure a transport file system, which could be on your, as a best practice, we always recommend to use EFS, which is our shared storage service, highly available, 4 nines of availability. Since this is a production system, so I'll say not applicable. And then my HANA database. So let's give the SID for that, SHP, and my systems instance number, and then my volume types. So I'll stick with the general purpose GP3 volume types. And here you get an option to do a single instance deployment, distributed, or a highly available, right? So we'll stick with the high availability deployment since this is our production system. And here you get a choice to bring your own subscription, or you can purchase the operating system subscription from AWS Marketplace. So let's go with AWS Marketplace. So we'll go for SUSE 15 SP1, and then I'll define my host name here. I'll auto-sign the IP address from my subnet, or you can do a custom IP address as well, and the instance number, and then you get the instance sizing based on the vCPU and the memory. So right now, if I go with 4 gig of memory, it's giving me C5A X large. So what if I want 16? So now it changes to M6A X large, and it's giving me the costs as well. So these are my estimated monthly costs. And then you define the settings or the configurations for your ERS, since we are configuring in a highly available way. So we are going for ASCS, ERS across the availability zone. So I'll stick with all the default values here. And then we are also configuring our HANA database. And one thing to point out here is the overlay IP, which should be outside your VPC CIDR range. And this is an important concept in AWS because this is basically your virtual IP. So if you are running a highly available cluster on premises, you might be aware of VIP, virtual IP. So overlay IP is similar to that. It's pointing to that active node, which is your primary instance in the route table of the subnet. And then the resource agents take care of that automated orchestration. So they'll update the route table in case of a failover. So let's define that overlay IP here. And it's outside my VPC CIDR range. And I'll stick with the default values for the rest of the configurations for my application server and the database as well, because in the interest of time, I do want to move to the next steps. And here I define the additional application server. So let's say we need one additional application server and then the host name for it. So we have S4P AAS, and you can have pre-deployment scripts configured. So it could be installation of a security agent. It could be hardening of that image. Maybe you're using SIS benchmarking for hardening that image. So you can have that script deployed as part of the Launch Wizard. And then as far as the post-deployment steps are concerned, you can have a restore script run. So if you could be deploying an N+1 environment and you want to do a restore of your production system from the production backup. So you could have a post-deployment restore script for your HANA database here, right? And then we click on next. And now this is the last step. So basically it'll ask you whether you want to install that SAP application software on top of the AWS resources that have been deployed and that will be configured. So let's select yes. So it supports SAP S/4HANA. So we'll select the latest version. And this is where you provide the path for your software locations in the, basically in the S3 buckets. And then you define the master password, your primary application server instance number, the virtual host names for your ASCS and the ERS instances, and then your database virtual host name. And then eventually it will also prompt you to whether you want to install an AWS Backint Agent or not. So we'll skip that. And in the last step, you simply have to review of what the configuration steps that you've input. And the moment you click on Create Deployment, what it does is it runs CloudFormation scripts behind the scenes. So let's go to the CloudFormation service. So this particular deployment pattern takes close to 2 hours. So we're not going to sit here and wait for 2 hours for it to complete. So what I did 2 days before is run this Launch Wizard for SAP. And as you can see, it is running those CloudFormation scripts behind the scenes, and the first one being the parent stack, and then all of them, all the others are your nested CloudFormation stacks. So let's select the parent stack and let's look at the events. So I started my deployment around 9:17 on 18th April, and it ended at 10:53. So it took around 2 hours to deploy a vanilla shell system for your usage. And if I go to the EC2 service, so it deployed ASCS and ERS across the availability zones. It also deployed the PaaS and the additional application servers across the availability zones. And then it also deployed my HANA databases, my primary and the secondary, configured HSR HANA system replication, and then configured the HANA database and the ASCS and the ERS instances in high availability, leveraging SUSE's pacemaker solution. So let's log on to one of the instances. And I'm using Systems Manager Session Manager, so I don't need any Bastion host or Jump server to log in. All right, so if I check SAP Tune solution list, so it leveraged the SAP Tune capability that SUSE offers to configure the operating system for me. So you see that star here, so it's configured that HANA system, and it configured all the operating system configurations for me, right? If I check the storage here, so it's configured the HANA data, the HANA shared volumes, HANA log volumes, and then also what it can also do is configure the volumes in LVM-based striping format so that you can get the baseline throughput and the IOPS that you need for your HANA databases. And then if we do a CRM stat, So this is basically to check whether my cluster is in shape or not. So I have my Stoneth, all my resource agents. Stoneth is shoot the other node in the head, right? All my overlay IP configurations, resource agents related to that, and then the SAP HANA and the SAP HANA topology resource agents have been configured as well. All right. So what we have done is basically deploy an SAP S/4HANA vanilla shell system in less than 2 hours, which is available for your usage. And this could be used for your greenfield implementation. This could be used for your SAP S/4HANA conversion as well, because you do need that target infrastructure to be set up on the AWS side as well. All right. In addition to Launch Wizard, what customers have also done is they've selected to work with AWS Professional Services team and build those DevOps pipelines for their SAP deployments. So CHS is a great example. They are an agricultural cooperative based in the US, and they worked with AWS Professional Services, and they were able to reduce SAP provisioning by 90%. They were able to patch 150 plus SAP instances across 6 accounts in less than an hour. And they were able to shut down their non-production systems during non-business hours to save on costs. So professional services team basically helped them build those auto start stop scripts for SAP, including the EC2 instance as well, so that they can save on costs for their non-production system. And this is not it. AWS Professional Services team has also built custom solutions leveraging AWS native services and basically serverless services for solutions like SAP refreshes. So basically, you can do a QA refresh using serverless technologies. And then they've also built auto-scaling solutions for SAP application servers. So you can not only scale out, but scale in as well. Now let's talk about monitoring. CloudWatch is our monitoring service, and CloudWatch application insights is something that the customers have been using for their SQL servers and their .NET applications. So we basically extended it to SAP HANA databases. So you can onboard an SAP HANA database quickly, create a resource group, create a user ID, and then give it the right permissions, and define that IAM role, and you're able to onboard that HANA database onto CloudWatch application insights. Out of the box, it offers more than 50 custom metrics that you can monitor. You can create a nice dashboard with all these custom metrics that you want to monitor in the CloudWatch console. And another neat feature that it has is anomaly detection. So the moment you enable anomaly detection for a particular metric, such as CPU utilization, the SageMaker service, which is our managed AI ML service, kicks in. It runs its algorithms. It studies all the statistical data, the previous data from the past few weeks, and it gives you the expected range for that CPU usage. So if that expected range is breached, you get alarms. And these could be dynamic alarms as well. And right now, CloudWatch Application Insights for SAP HANA supports single, multi-node, and high availability landscapes. Now next, I want to talk about AWS Backint Agent for your SAP HANA databases. So previously, what customers used to do was take the backup of that HANA database onto an EBS volume, a local volume, and then eventually move those backups from that local volume to S3. So we got constant feedback from our customers again that they want a simpler, more of an AWS native solution. So SAP provides a functionality which is SAP Backint, and that's basically an interface to which third-party vendors can connect and take that backup to a storage solution. So that is what exactly that we did. So we created the AWS Backint Agent. So now you're able to take those HANA databases back up directly to S3. So we are removing that middle layer of local EBS volume. It supports HANA Studio, HANA Cockpit, and you can even use HTTP SQL using CLI. And it's available in all the commercial regions. It's free of cost. It's SAP certified. It can take full backups, differential backups, log backups, or incremental backups as well. Now that we've talked about management and monitoring, let's talk about innovation and transformation. So one feedback, again, that we got from our customers and partners was that over-customization of their SAP systems has led to greater complexities when they started integrating these SAP systems, with other data sources. So instead of customizing at the application level, now what the customers are doing is they're keeping the core clean. So they're avoiding any customization at the SAP application layer. And they are moving to a model where they're leveraging high-level services, AWS native services, or it could be SAP BTP services to extend that SAP system. So in the bottom layer, what you see is infrastructure and all the core services, security and compliance, and all the management tools that we have. On top of it is you're running your data lakes, your SAP systems, your BW systems, or it could be any other third-party applications as well in that SAP environment. And then on top of it, what you're doing is leveraging AWS native services. These could be managed services, fully managed services based around AI, ML, and then IoT capabilities that we have. Or it could be a warehouse solution as well, like Redshift. Or you can extend your SAP application leveraging SAP BTP platform, which is business technology platform. So if I talk about AWS native service, one service that we have is AppFlow, which again has been there for quite a bit of time, and it helps you extract that data from various SaaS applications. So we've extended it to SAP as well. So you can extract data from your SAP system using OData protocol, and basically you're exposing those SAP gateway service as the OData protocol, and then you're extracting data through Amazon AppFlow and getting onto Amazon S3. Now, once it lands in S3, now the possibilities are endless. You can again have serverless ETL services like AWS Glue. You can move it to Redshift, a data warehouse solution, and then you can use AI ML services on top of it as well to extend your SAP application. Let's talk about a modern enterprise analytics with SAP data. So you got your SAP S/4HANA system, which can support operational reporting and embedded analytics. But often it's not enough, because you've got your SaaS applications such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, and you want to combine data from various disparate sources, right? And then you've got AWS IoT, and you've got IoT devices running in your manufacturing shop floor. And for your SaaS applications, you're using Amazon AppFlow. For your S4 application, again, you're exposing those gateway services on OData protocol and then extracting the data using Amazon AppFlow. For other data sources, such as Oracle, JD Edwards, other ERP solutions, SQL Server, you have the option to use AWS serverless services such as Glue, Lambda, and then you've got DMS, Database Migration Service, which can be used for extracting data from these source systems as well. Or if you've already invested in other tools, in third-party tools like SAP solution, which is around data services, or SAP SLT, System Landscape Transformation, or it could be Informatica or MuleSoft of the worlds, right? And then it could be Magnitude. And Magnitude is being extensively used in S4 HANA central finance implementations. Or it could be other third-party solutions like HVR. And now you're storing that data in Amazon S3. It could be S3 Glacier, which could archive your data, and then Glue data catalog as well. And while all this is happening, you're building an AWS data lake with the help of Lake Formation. And on top of this data that is being stored, you can use AI ML services, fully managed, to extend your SAP system and the data coming from other systems as well. So for example, you can use Amazon Forecast. So an insurance company can predict how much claim they need to reserve in the next 6 months. Or there are invoices coming from your vendor and you need to extract data from those invoices. You can use Amazon Textract. And then combine that data with the sales order which are coming from SAP S/4HANA and then send it back. And when it comes to analyzing that data, you're using Amazon Redshift, Athena, which is our SQL as a service, and then Open Search service as well. And then you consume that data based on your favorite visualization tool, which could be Amazon QuickSight, SAP Analytics Cloud, or it could be Tableau. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Christina, who will talk about how you can get started with your SAP S/4HANA journey on AWS.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Rosal. There's a lot of great information. Okay, so now let's talk about how to get started on your own SAP on AWS journey. One of the things that Rosal talked about a little bit earlier was the migration journey and the our MAP program, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this. But basically, of all of the years of experience we have doing this, we have a proven model to help customers go through assess, mobilize, and migrate and modernize. And we call this our MAP process. In the assess phase, you're basically going to engage in a discovery workshop where we're going to understand your outcomes, your environment. You're going to learn a little bit about the SAP on AWS services and your options. And more importantly, we're going to do an initial TCO assessment to help you understand where you can see the benefits of moving SAP to AWS. The second phase, the mobilize phase, we're going to do three things. One is a technical validation. We're going to do a pilot or a proof of concept with you where you're going to get hands-on experience working with AWS and SAP and help you validate your migration strategy. We're also going to help you with a migration plan to help you understand which workloads you're going to tackle when. And then finally, we're going to help you with the business case to help you understand the resources and the investments that you're going to need in order to make this transformation, as well as the benefits that you're going to realize in the long run. Then in the next stage, the migrate and the modernize stage, this is when you actually start moving workloads into the cloud. And we're there to guide you through every step of the way through that process. And once you get to that stage, you'll start to realize the following benefits: reduce costs, reduce risks, increase agility, and the ability to innovate faster. Now, you don't have to go it alone. As I mentioned, we have a large partner community that has years of experience in exactly this migrate and modernize process. And of these partners, about 70 of them have actually invested in the SAP competency. This is an APN program that is unique in the industry, and the partners that have invested in getting this competency have proven technical and customer success. So you have an extra layer of confidence when you work with an SAP competency partner. In addition, you can also engage our professional services team, and Rosal mentioned a few of the ways in which our professional services team engages with our customers, and you can see some of the offerings that they provide as well. Now, we've been talking a lot about the outcomes that customers have realized from moving their SAP real estate to AWS. And I just want to close with a couple of examples: Moderna, Liberty Mutual, Zalando, and Energy. And you can go to our website and you can read more about these use cases and these customer outcomes. And hopefully you're going to find an example that resonates with you, and you can bring that to AWS and get started on your journey. So again, for next steps, talk to your AWS account manager about getting a discovery workshop or an immersion day going. In addition to working with AWS, you can also talk to your partner. If there's a partner that you're working with, ask them about it. If you need help finding a partner, we can help you do that as well. You can also work with our AWS Professional Services and our ERT specialty practice. And then lastly, make sure you ask about and explore the AWS Migration Acceleration Program. There are credits and other funding available for eligible SAP workloads to, again, further help you reduce your cost and risk for taking that journey. So speaking of learning more, I think you've probably seen this in other presentations, but be sure to check out the free training that we offer as part of AWS Skill Builder. And then I would also encourage you to check out the AWS certifications and consider getting certified and participating in our exclusive community of builders and professionals that have AWS certifications. And feel free to scan those QR codes to get more information about that. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Christina Graisman. On behalf of myself and Rosal Singh, thanks so much for your attention. And we'll be available after the session if you have any questions.